Good morning. It is Thursday, January the 31st, and this is The Drill. And thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. I used to be like most other conservatives, a reactionary. I define myself as being conservative because of my stand on the issues, but I've learned better since then. And speaking to all you butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, you and I have been brainwashed, and we've been brainwashed into believing that we are conservative when in reality we are, or have been in my case, reactionary. Decades ago, the Democrats, with the acquiescence of the Republicans, set the table, politically speaking, by deliberately redefining political identity. The Democrats decided that one's position on the issues are what define the political parties. Naturally, the Democrats decided that the issues decided what the issues should be. And decided in a way that favors the Democrats. The news departments reinforced this decision, and the Republicans have paid the price ever since. The Democrats created an action-reaction political dynamic, with Republicans playing the role of reactionary. In reality, voters are either left or right as a matter of fact, not as a matter of political opinion. The most essential political fact of reality is change. You and I are defined by our attitudes about change. Change is indicated when there's an improvement to the status quo. Unless there's something obviously better than what we have now, we stay the course. That's realistic, i.e. conservative. Constant change in the blind search for perfection is idealistic, or liberal socialistic. Defining voters by the issues turns everything on its head. Progress and moving forward take precedence over common sense. Change, not because it's better, but for the sake of change. Act first, think later. Trial and error. As a result of issues-based politics, Republicans become reflexively rigid and resist change for the sake of resisting change. We become caught in a trap of constantly reacting to liberals, socialists, and from now on I'm just going to refer to them as Democrats, and unable to promote values. Talk show hosts have fallen into the reactionary trap of promoting opinion instead of values. The right talks and thinks only about political tactics and techniques, while American culture is ignored. This gets things backwards. If we concentrate on shaping our culture, the politics will follow. The political landscape today is the result of years and even decades of cultural influence, mainly by the left. Being conservative starts by asking questions, challenging the left's assumptions, and saying no. Being conservative isn't about standing athwart history and yelling stop. It's about standing athwart history and yelling prove it. Not fearing change, but not worshiping it either. Respecting the status quo, thinking first rather than acting first, subordinating might to right. Another feature of issues-based politics is that it sets up a battle between competing ideal societies or visions of ideal societies. The way things stand now in the United States of America, we have competing ideal societies, primarily between the conservatives and the liberals. The liberals have an ideal vision of an ideal society. Conservatives have a vision of an ideal society as well, or I should say reactionaries, people that call themselves conservatives. And the problem for conservatives in this position is that they can't win. Liberals are painting a picture of an ideal society that is permissive, that is yes-oriented, that tells the individual you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, and you don't have to suffer the consequences. You can act with impunity. You can have free education. You can have free health care. You can be as promiscuous as you want to be. And the conservatives have a vision of an ideal society that is restrictive, The conservative vision for an ideal society is based on the word no. No, you can't have an abortion. No, you can't be promiscuous. No, you can't do this, you can't do that, etc., etc. It's restrictive, limiting. In that kind of a competition, who's likely to win? The person or group that says yes all the time. That's very, very appealing to the average voter, to have somebody that tells you, yes, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, we will empower you, and etc., versus having somebody that's telling you, well, no, you can't do that. You're going to have to, it's like telling a child that you can eat ice cream all the time, and you have another parent that says, no, you've got to eat your peas. Which parent do you think the child is going to favor? The permissive parent. The old battle. You have one parent that allows the child to do whatever they want, always says yes, and the other parent that is actually, in reality, looking out for the best interest of the child by setting limits. Initially, at least, the child is going to be more attracted to the parent that allows them to do whatever they want, because children think that if it feels good, it must be good, and if it feels bad, it must be bad. Adults know that that's not always the case. So, a question that you might ask in terms of this presumption for the status quo: can minorities, for instance, be conservative? And the answer is yes, particularly a true conservative, because all a true conservative has to do is be able to make the presumption for the status quo. Women can do that. Blacks can do that. Asians can do that. Hispanics can do that. As a matter of fact, issues-based politics has another effect. It has a tendency to lock people in. If you are Hispanic, a woman, black, etc., generally speaking, you're going to be liberal, because all of the issues that liberals support favor you. And you're going to have a tendency resisting being a conservative, because the conservative positions on the issues that are of concern to you are run against you. So another good reason to be a true conservative. Be conservative by making the presumption for the status quo, accepting change and promoting change when change is indicated. So when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And from the Ayn Rand lexicon, the concept of the day is aesthetics. The fifth and last branch of philosophy is aesthetics, the study of art, which is based on metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. The aesthetic principles which apply to all art, regardless of an individual artist's philosophy, and which must guide an objective evaluation, are defined by the science of aesthetics, a task at which modern philosophy has failed dismally. The position of art in the scale of human knowledge is, perhaps, the most eloquent symptom of the gulf between man's progress in the physical sciences and his stagnation, or today his retrogression, in the humanities. While in other fields of knowledge men have outgrown the practice of seeking the guidance of mystic oracles, whose qualifications for the job was unintelligibility, in the field of ethics or aesthetics, this practice has remained in full force and is becoming more crudely obvious today. Just as savages took the phenomena of nature for granted as an irreducible primary not to be questioned or analyzed, as the exclusive domain of unknowable demons, so today's epistemological savages take art for granted as an irreducible primary not to be questioned or analyzed, as the exclusive domain of a special kind of unknowable demon, their emotions. The only difference is that the prehistorical savage's error was innocent. and that was aesthetics, today's concept concept of the day from the Ayn Rand lexicon. So when I come back, I'm going to be starting with Chapter 4 of the 30 covert emotional manipulation techniques. Thank you very much. And the 30 covert emotional manipulation techniques. And I'm reading this because all of these techniques that are listed in here and the ways to deal with them are relevant, not only in terms of understanding our political situation in this country, but in terms of dealing with people day to day, dealing with your significant others, your husband, wife, also, or boyfriend, girlfriend, also with dealing with relatives, sisters and aunts and uncles, dealing with your coworkers, dealing with strangers even, somebody that you might meet in line at Vaughn's, for instance. And Chapter 4 is titled, I Refuse to Have This Discussion. It's all about invalidation. And we start with a quote by R.D. Lang, a psychiatrist. Quote, when we invalidate people or deny their perceptions and personal experiences, we make mental invalids of them. When one's feelings are denied, a person can be made to feel crazy even when they are perfectly mentally healthy, unquote. An especially damaging form of emotional abuse. Invalidation is the act of rejecting, diminishing, ignoring, judging, or making fun of someone's feelings. Unfortunately, it happens all too often, and there even seems to be an epidemic of it in society. Invalidation is insidious and often pervasive in certain relationships. When we've had our feelings invalidated, we know that something just doesn't feel right, but we can't put our finger on exactly what it is. One reason it remains hidden is that many of us have learned to think invalidation is normal because it's so common. You may even do it to others. It might be common, but it's not healthy. Think of how often you've heard people say things like, it could be worse, lighten up, don't let it get to you, just forget about it, or you can choose to be happy. People invalidate others for a variety of reasons, sometimes purposefully and sometimes not. An abuser will use invalidation as a tool of manipulation and a weapon. Others may be short on empathy. Some may feel uncomfortable with your emotions or feel powerless to do anything to help you. Some are envious of you and will invalidate your achievements and the things that bring you happiness. It's not such a big deal, or he's not really that great, you could do better. The bottom line is this, when you're invalidated, it's not having your emotional needs met. You are not having your emotional needs met because the person doing the invalidating is not behaving with empathy. Quote, one does not have to operate with great malice to do great harm. The absence of empathy and understanding are sufficient, unquote. Quote by Charles M. Blow. Empathy is understanding and identifying with another's feelings or difficulties and then conveying that understanding to them. It creates a sense of caring and mutual understanding. In other words, empathy connects people emotionally. When you tell someone close to you that you're feeling blue about something and they say, it really isn't that bad, a lot of people have it worse, you know. Do you feel cared for, understood, and supported? Of course not, because your feelings and concerns have been invalidated. The other person conveyed that they don't think your feelings are valid, so therefore they will not offer any support. As a result, you will not have your emotional needs met. We all have innate emotional needs. If these needs aren't met, there can be serious consequences to our psychological health. Invalidation is no trivial matter. According to Stephen Hine, author of the excellent and invaluable website eqi.org, invalidation is psychological murder or soul murder. Having emotional needs does not mean you are needy. It means you're normal. Our fundamental emotional needs, to be acknowledged, to be accepted, to be listened to be understood, to be loved, to be appreciated, to be respected, to be valued, to feel worthy, to be trusted, to feel capable and competent, to feel clear, not confused, to be supported, and to be physically and emotionally safe. You can determine the health of your current relationships by determining whether or not your emotional needs are being met. Invalidation needs to be recognized and taken seriously because it can lead to mental health problems. Researcher Thomas R. Lynch, Ph.D., found that, quote, a history of emotional invalidation was significantly associated with emotional inhibition, i.e. ambivalence over emotional expression and thought suppression and avoidant stress responses. Further, emotion inhibition significantly predicted psychological distress, including depression and anxiety symptoms, unquote. When we experience invalidation, we defend ourselves either through withdrawal or counterattack. Repeated withdrawal, though, tends to decrease our self-confidence and lead to a sense of powerlessness and depression. On the other hand, going on the offensive often escalates the conflict. A healthier response, one which is both informative and assertive without being aggressive, is to simply express your feelings clearly and concisely. For example, you might respond, I feel invalidated, I feel mocked, or I feel judged, says Hine. How someone's response to those statements is important. Do they invalidate you again when they say you feel invalidated, or do they want to learn more? And I'm going to stop right there and say that this is typical of what goes on with Democrats and Republicans, with the liberals and the way they treat conservatives. Conservatives express their concerns about things, their emotion, how they feel, for instance, let's say about abortion, and they get invalidated. Their feelings or thoughts are dismissed. Very often, Republicans or conservatives have been and continue to be dismissed as being crazy, that we need to be in an insane asylum, or we need to seek some type of psychiatric or psychological treatment, and that's all invalidation. That the only thing that matters is what the liberals want, when they want it, how they want it, etc. And any objections that conservatives might have, our feelings about psychological, emotional security, about the country that we live in, is invalidated by the left. So, and again, and if Republicans come out and say that they feel that they've been invalidated, then they're very often mocked and ridiculed, instead of having the left engage in good faith and say, okay, well, let's talk about this. How is it that you feel invalidated, and try to work it out? And that's the reason why we don't get political solutions anymore. We don't have the right and the left in Washington sitting down and negotiating in good faith to come up with solutions to problems that validate both sides. Okay, what they in Washington like to call a compromise, but I don't think of it as compromise. Yes, we expect our politicians to negotiate and to do so in good faith. We do not expect them necessarily to compromise, because that's not always necessary. Very often there's a rush to compromise, and compromise can be as invalidating as any of the statements that he's going to describe here in a minute. Like, I thought we already talked about that. I can't believe you're going to bring that up again. I refuse to have this discussion. Invalidating Nancy Pelosi with the border issue. Nancy Pelosi says it's a non-starter. If you want to have a wall on the border, it's a non-starter. Instead of saying, hey, I acknowledge, I understand your need for security, and I understand that you see having a wall as the best way to provide border security. But I think there's a better way. Okay, that saying something like that is conducive to having a discussion, is conducive to having a good faith debate, a good faith negotiation. But to come out and simply invalidate your opponents by saying it's a non-starter, that's, again, it's invalidating, and there's nowhere to go with that. That's not negotiating in good faith. That's just being obstinate, among other things. But that's, again, the point is that it is an example of the left invalidating the needs and wants of the people on the right. So at this point, that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill, and or maybe I should say the Jackhammer. And until next time, thank you very much for listening, and have a great day.